Hi, and welcome back to Redmond Reviews with Michael Redmond, 9-Dan Professional. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
I, of course, am Chris Garlock, managing editor of the AGA E-Journal. So, Michael, I think this is planned to be our last master commentary in this particular series, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, last of the 60 games. It's sort of fitting, I think, because in this game against Park Junghwan, it seems to me that Master had a hard time winning, so it's kind of I'm sort of hoping to end in a hopeful note, and showing that the human can do fairly well after all.
Especially as we're heading off to China to see some live Masters, so that'll be exciting. So, all right, let's take a look at the game.
Yeah, well, Park Junghwan is I think he's the strongest player in Korea, probably ranked number 2 to Kaje. And in this game, he plays the Chinese opening. He plays an opening that is quite similar to one that AlphaGo played against itself in the 3 games that DeepMind published. Like this is the opening that AlphaGo played against itself in these 3 games that were published on the DeepMind homepage. And after that, actually, a lot of pros were trying this style. It's sort of unusual because one would expect this black stone to be somewhere on the left side, like that marked point. But instead, black is using one move on the lower side of the board, and sort of leaving the upper left area for white to choose how to handle it. Sort of inviting white into a fight. Like at this point of the game, we know what Master does, but a human player would normally be thinking of maybe jumping into the left side or how to jump into the upper side. So this is the game move, which sort of goes against the common knowledge that you're not supposed to go into the Chinese opening on the 3rd line. But this is just the way Master does it. So this is the move that a human would usually play against the Chinese opening. Although, of course, after Master has done this a few times, we see humans trying that out too. So this is the normal way to jump into the right side. Otherwise, you could play something here. Actually, I could add another variation, playing on the mark point here. Playing here also. Black would probably extend here, and you would have this kind of fight maybe. A running fight into the center. So this is sort of what black is trying to set up, because black would hope to attack white on the left side while building up the upper left area. And it looks like black locally is going to have the aggressive position here, because white has to worry about the corner territory, like to the point that white might actually be thinking of playing this move like this. This would make a more secure corner territory, but then black would be able to do something like this, and black would have a stronger shape also on the side. And we can see that
floating there in the middle.
White's going to have to be running around, and black will probably be able to surround some sizable territory in the upper left area. So this is one of black's plans. So I would suggest, so yeah, this one. Let's just go back to the game. So when black plays here, one way for white to play would be to play here. This would be making Miai of the upper left corner and the left side. So if black plays here, white's going to extend on the left side. So this is an extension and a pincer. So it's supposed to be a very efficient move.
Okay.
So I'd be fairly happy with this variation. Otherwise, if black plays from this side, white's going to move towards the upper left corner, and all sorts of stuff can happen now. Like there's a lot of new variations coming out in professional games. It's something that's pretty popular. I'll just show you one. This one is kind of a one of the, actually this happened a lot with the Chinese opening.
Yeah.
Something like this. It's not so bad for white. White has invaded both the upper side and the left side, and black has to do something about the left side now. And so it's about an even game. So this is something that white could do, but it's not what Master chooses to do. Because Master plays this low Kakari, which is supposed to be a bad move when black plays here. If white extends, and we never see master playing this move, so this is a move that might be disappearing from Go actually, because
Really?
it is a very well. When black has the pincer on the upper side, we know that it's a very heavy shape for white. So professionals will know that already this is not very good for white. But the way master plays looks dangerous, and it looks like an overplay.
It does.
And yeah, so that's why professionals just don't play the Kakari in the first place. Professionals don't play this move.
Right, just avoid it completely.
Yeah, like this would be much easier to handle, because if black plays here, then white can. This is also a kind of a joseki that came up with the. Well, this up to this point. If we take it from here up to here, this was actually around for hundreds of years. Like this, I'll mark the black move, the Chinese opening. Although we call this the Chinese opening, this move from the 3-4 point, the komoku, to the middle of the side here, this extension, instead of playing a shimari, this is something that Hoinbo Dosaku like to play. And so this whole sequence here in the upper left corner is something that we have seen in Dosaku's games also. Only in Dosaku's time, no one had came up with this move. So this is kind of a more modern invention pushing through here. But up to this point, the whole sequence here has been around for about 300 years at least. And I haven't seen it before Dosaku. If it happened before Dosaku, there just was no record of it. So I'm saying it started with Dosaku.
So do you feel like this one would come back now?
Well, this is the way a human would be thinking of playing for white also. And so this kind of thing happens. The point is, white has a living shape here. It's completely alive. Black has a nice position on the left side. White takes the corner. This is an even result. It's going to be a close game probably. So I don't see anything wrong with this. It's just that master plays here, and master can make this work. So that makes this move look attractive too. So when black plays here, I've already talked about how this is very heavy shape. So master plays here. Of
course.
And again, a number of times I have talked about how master likes to press at the 5-4 point here, even when black has this stone here. But when black has the stone there, it's supposed to be an overplay for white when black plays here. For instance, if white covers here, black cuts. Now, locally, this is just going to be a very difficult fight for white. White has two weak stone groups on both sides. So the idea is that when white plays this attachment here, so this is the master move. When white plays the attachment here, let's just add one more variation. When black plays here, that means that white will have that much extra strength with this marked stone here. This is adding a lot to white's group on the upper side. So this makes it feasible for white. Like if black continues with something like this, white has a fairly good position on the upper side. Like if we continue with something like this and something like this, white's getting a lot of territory in the corner and the upper side in return for losing something on the left side. So this would be more like an even trade. So that's part of the meaning of this move. But of course, you have to be ready for various ways that black can try to refute it. So this is what happened in a game. It was, I think it was game 22.
Yeah, I think so.
I actually did a video on that game with Chen Yaoye against Master. I'll just go through the moves for a bit. Master plays the hane on the top, and the way Master sort of takes control of the center of the board like this, it really reminds me of Dosaku. So this is a kind of a point where I wonder if Dosaku is somehow mixed in with Master.
That would be cool.
Maybe sitting there behind the screen. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Because Dosaku also really liked to control the center. And making it work is really difficult. But in this position, I already sort of liked the way white's playing. And very shortly after this, that game became a winnable game for white. So I already like it when white is curling around on the top here. And this is, let's see, it's game 48. So it's been a few days since Master played this move against Chen Yaoye.
Yeah.
I would expect that Park has studied that game.
Mm-hmm.
And he's played this opening because he's expecting Master to play this way, and he has an idea that he can refute it.
He has a plan.
He has a plan. So Chen Yaoye played the Hane on this side. And I showed this variation just sort of as an example. The moves that a pro will think of first will be either this Hane or this Hane. These are the natural moves. In a position like this, when black has so many stones in the area, so much superior strength on the upper side, black wants to play as aggressively as possible. So instead of just pulling back like this, which is sort of a weak move or defensive move, black wants to be playing a Hane, which is more offensive, more aggressive. White plays, again, a Hane on the top. And Pak came back with the double Hane here. It's a very strong fighting move.
Ooh, I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I get the feeling that he had this prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Master continues. This is the only continuation I can see for white. It makes sense because we can see that it's not a good idea for black to cut at the mark point. That should be pretty obvious. It's going to be a double Atari, right?
Yeah.
And so what white has accomplished here is that white has made covering on the fourth line here possible. So that was the other part of white's plan when white played. I went a bit too far back. When white played this move here, part of the plan was that white wanted to make this move work. So it worked in this case. In this game against Chen Yaoye, white didn't have time to move to the left side, but white got to trade by controlling the center like this and reducing blacks. And so it's really hard for white to have just one objective in this fight because it all depends on how black responds. So white's plan has to change depending on how black plays. But when black plays this way, it means that white's going to lose something on the right side or the right part of the upper side. And it's going to get this back on the left side or the upper left corner in that white can cover here now and black cannot refute it. So black extends in the center, another thick move. At this point, white has, if we look just at the right part of this fight, black has won that part because all of white's stones are sort of all over the place. And of course, black is preparing to cut next. Black is threatening to cut at the 5-5 point. So if white just plays here, though, then black's going to slide on the left side. And in this position, black can still capture this marked stone. This is the cutting stone, but black can still, like if white plays something like this, black still has the option of playing here and capturing it. And so black has a pretty safe position in the center, and white is still floating around. So this would be good enough for black. So white didn't do that. White covers. Now, if white can cover once, there's going to be a big difference. Like if black protects the corner, we can see that the corner black stones look they look like they're in trouble, right? There's such bad shape. It's an empty triangle shape. Black's going to be in Damezmari or a lack of liberty. So usually black would be thinking of playing something like this, in which place white can play here. And now going down at A, the Sargari at A is going to be forcing against the corner.
Against the corner, right.
That means that white's stone at B is connected now. So next white can be thinking of playing at C to start a counterattack in the center. And of course, we can see that white is developing towards the right side also. So there's a lot more stuff that black has to worry about in this variation. So that's why playing here would be slack, but covering here is a lot better than that.
Well, yeah, and it means that those two black stones are going to wind up floating in the center.
Yeah, of course, the Park is not going to allow that to happen. So Park cuts here.
Ah, right away. Wow. Wow.
And obviously, you have to be really worried about the corner.
Yeah.
But either this move or this move are one of these two is going to be the key point.
Oh.
And the game is going to change dramatically depending on which one white chooses, because in either case, black is going to play the opposite direction. Like if white plays here, black has to play here just to avoid white playing an Atari at that point. And white will end up throwing away, sacrificing those stones on the upper side and getting a position on the left side.
Wow.
This is not what happened in the actual game.
Okay.
But actually, I think this is something that Master could have done. And it's really hard to say whether this is better than the game or not. It's about the same. I think this is about even. So this is one, it'd really be interesting, I think, this is a case where I would like to see what winning percentages the AI is giving to this kind of variation.
Right.
And I'd be interested to see what its valuation is, because I think it's about even. And I'm not really sure whether I like this or the actual game. So let's take a look at what happened in the actual game.
Yeah, let's.
In the actual game, white plays this honey. Again, if black covers here, this is just going to be a disaster for black. So when white plays this honey, black has to extend here. If white plays this honey, black's going to extend here. And then, of course, black will have room to live in the corner. And so that's, well, just as good enough, because white's going to be dead on the upper side. So that's why white's going to throw away the upper side in this case. White has no choice.
Right.
In this case, white is actually, again, this would be just a disaster for black. So black, now white has to try to live on the upper side. After playing this honey on at D18, white has to continue on the upper side. So white extends. And this is sort of interesting. Black plays this cut to squeeze here. So this is what the squeeze that happened in the game. We can see that it sort of lets white off the hook. It gives white the opportunity to live relatively easily. It also captures the keystone here, the keystone on the fourth line. So black's connecting his stones up. There is the question of what would happen if black had played here immediately. But covering here is actually a pretty big point too. So I would guess that Park didn't like the idea of white covering on the third line here, which also is going to give white a living shape on the upper side. And it's going to give some extra value to these stones on the upper side, which can start moving out next. So this is what Park was trying to avoid when he played this squeeze here. And just to go into it, the reason that white doesn't connect here is that it would make a big difference on the left side, because black captures the two marked stones with this move. So it's a very efficient way for black to capture the two marked stones. And white will live in the corner, but when black captures these two stones on the left side, there was really no point for white to save the stone at A now, because black has such a thick shape on the left side of the board. And so Master allows black to squeeze here. And then black has to escape on the side. If white continues here, the semi in the corner is going to favor black. White doesn't have enough space to make a life.
Right.
So at this point, white has to start living in the corner. So white's alive now. And I wouldn't be surprised if this whole variation here is a lot of moves, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was something that Park had worked out beforehand, because it's a pretty natural sequence. I think it's a sequence that naturally it was very difficult to work out, but it looks like it's something that could happen naturally after black's move here. Sorry about that. After black's move here, it seems to be a logical sequence that leads to that.
So what's your feeling about after, take it through to after,
After all of this, I think it's actually looking pretty good for black. I would be pretty happy playing with black. And the reason I sort of paused here is that there's a question about how black should go after the white stones here.
Yeah.
Black can just push through here. I think this would have been better than the game.
That's just the easiest way.
If white connects, then black cuts. And this is going to be no good for white. Like just running out like this would be, looking at that thick shape that black has on the upper side, there's really no point for white to be running away with these stones. Black's just getting a very good position on the left side, and white's still floating in the center. So this is no good for white.
No.
It's probably better for white just to sacrifice.
Just give up the stones.
Yeah. But then you see white is getting very little on the left side. White would probably continue with something like this maybe, but still it's going to be, white's going to have some trouble making a good shape on the left side. So I think this is actually pretty good for black. But let's look at what happened in the game. Black extended here, sort of trying to attack white on a larger scale. If white covers here, then black's going to push through and cut. So this would be even better for black. But what white did is white bumped against black here. And black has to be careful because it turns out black has to save those stones in the upper left.
Yeah.
So what happened in the game is black pushed through now and was forced to take the two stones. And white got a much better shape on the left side.
Wow.
So just to give a variation, like maybe black could play something like this. But eventually, in this variation, black would end up eventually have to do something to connect on the left side. Like black would have to connect underneath here, which is a bit painful, maybe. So this is another thing that could have happened. But it was Park probably just didn't want to be playing on the second line like this. So
no,
at this point, black was up. Yeah. So if we're looking at this variation though, it's probably better for black to have gone after them first and ended up with this variation. This looks a lot better for black than the actual game. So I think black messed up a little bit here, but it's still playable when black has Sente and can move into the lower left corner. So this is a moving in, settling this group on the left side is a very important move, and it makes up for the fact that white got a pretty good shape on the left side partially. So I think that black is still in the game. It's pretty close. If white plays this move, the connection, white has a choice here, pushing through in the connection. Actually, it's interesting because there was a period where just about everyone was connecting here. But after the AlphaGo games, like there was an AlphaGo game against Lee et al., in which we had this variation. I think it was AlphaGo playing into the corner, playing with black in this position. And it was Lee et al. Who pushed through on the second line. This is also a joysticky variation that was slightly less popular than connecting here. But this is an example of when connecting is not very good for white because black would just connect. And when black has enough room to make this at once, even though it's a one-space extension, it's pretty good. It's a living position on the left side. And we can see that white's left side group is not 100% alive. So this would be playable for black. I've marked it up a little bit. There's an A and a B on the diagram here to show possible next moves for white. White would either jump at A or invade at B. And I'm not really sure which is better. So I just gave those two options there. But black's probably pretty happy with this position on the left side. So I think it makes sense for white to be pushing through. Locally, this is a much better trade for white. But white does need the one extra move now. So there's a difference of Sente and Gote.
Which is huge.
It is also important because black gets this point in the center.
Yeah.
And again, although I think black made a small mistake on the left side, my judgment is actually that in the upper left fight, black was doing better than white.
Interesting.
And so I think this is an even game at this point.
Well, which is, as you said at the beginning, actually progress for the human players because we're at what number move is this?
This is move 67. Like
oh yeah,
almost everyone. Like the last game I did, game 47, I was talking about. It was before move 20. It was something like 16 or something like that, where I said that this is where white went wrong. And most of the games, it's like just one very subtle mistake that the human player does in the first 30 moves. Usually, and after that, master just goes away with it.
Right. And so this is progress because this is 60 some moves in, and it's still a game.
We're going to go to about 100 moves before I'm going to declare a win for white. So this is pretty spectacular. It's the best, maybe the best game. If we're talking about the length of time that the human player is kept in the game, I think this could be the best game of all of them.
So I'm not a boxing fan, but it's reminding me in boxing, just if you can stay in there, against a stronger player, every round that you can stay in is a win, even though you're going to lose in the end. 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds. So
Okay. Okay. Now, it's sort of interesting just to go back one move and talk about this because the common joseki is to play here.
And I just wanted to ask a question. Was there any way for white to come out of this with Sente, or was that just not going to happen?
Okay. Well, I was talking about that with this move. This would end with Sente for white, and then white would have a choice of A and B. Yeah.
Okay.
So white chose to have a better position here, and a safe position for the left side group. Like this position is white's left side group is sort of a liability here.
Gotcha.
It's not alive yet. So white is playing thickly, very patiently, you might say. Of course, I suppose AIs are sort of naturally patient. They don't have emotions, but
they've got all the time in the world.
All the time in the world, yeah. They don't get tired. White does have to worry about eventually black running out with this move. So I would be sort of a bit worried about that for the time being. If black moves out here, let's just do a variation for that. White would be able to. Oh, sorry, that wasn't right. That was a mistake. White would be able to play a few forcing moves from above before capturing. I would expect this. White could actually even choose to push once more. And so it's not as if black's going to be able to attack white right away. So that's why black is not doing this immediately. So black left it for a time. This is a really big move. It reduces white's left side, and it starts to build on the center here. And then white adds another. This is a very slow move. It's a very thick move. And we can see that white is sort of thinking of reducing black's center with this move.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the move that would come to my mind. So I added a variation for that. I really want to go into this one because I would be tempted to play this move. And if we assume this kind of variation, this looks really efficient for white because white's taking away the lower side black territory. And now white doesn't have to worry about what happens on the left side because white's alive already.
Sure.
And so this is going to turn out like this. Now the lower right corner is becoming a bit weak, so white would probably add a stone to it, and something like this would happen. So the good part of this for white is that white doesn't have to worry about black escaping at A anymore, because white's alive on both sides, so there's no point for black to escape at A. The negative part for white is that black's moyo in the center is getting closer and closer to being territory.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, if I had white, I would be tempted to just take the territory like this and jump into the center with my next move, like maybe crawling once, assuming if we assume that black answers it, like something like this is what I would have in mind.
Is that far enough? I mean, that's the right area right there. I was wondering. I was trying to figure out how far he could go.
I'd really need some time to think about it, but just looking at black's territory, black doesn't really have so much territory in the other parts of the board, like it's just the one territory there. So maybe white will jump once here first, but I would be thinking of this area. Now, if this is not good enough, then that means this is already bad for white.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it has to work, otherwise white's already made a mistake. So it's a judgment thing. And so this is something actually that is sort of lacking in my game, this kind of patience. I would always go for the more efficient looking move. And so I have to, it's a question I have left from this game. Is this actually the better move? And this is another thing I would be, if I had access to Master, I would be asking winning percentages for both of these variations to see what Master thought about them, because I think this is a feasible option also, but also sometimes I do stuff like this and I get into trouble because, as I was showing you, sometimes it can lead to black getting a lot more influence in the center.
Yes.
And sometimes just white's invasion is not going to be in time. And so it's a very delicate thing that you have to judge correctly. And sometimes it's actually a weakness in my own game because I get too greedy sometimes.
I think that's certainly true for all of us amateur players.
And so it's it's a move that I potentially can learn from, but I'm not really sure about it at this point. Black now, obviously, black is going to move to the lower side, and jumps up. This is the natural move. But this is a point where I'm not sure again, because the lower side is still a bit open here. And the lower side is where Master took the game away. So I'm sort of worried about the way Black is surrounding the lower side. Like locally, it would be better for Black to be playing here. This would give Black a solid territory, but it would also give White more freedom to choose whatever next move. Like White might be playing something like this now. And so White would have a lot more freedom to leave the lower right corner away. Whereas when Black plays here, this is putting a little pressure on the lower right corner. And so White answered here. So there's a difference in the way that White's going to play, and that White would be able to play away from the lower right corner if Black played this way. It would just have less effect on White.
Right.
And so it's another move that this move has more control of the game for the time being, but it does leave some weakness for Black on the lower side. And now this is a very difficult game to continue with at this point. Because Black basically, in general, we can say that Black has two options. Black has the option of continuing to surround the center.
Okay.
Or otherwise, Black can do something like this to split the right. This is a huge move. If I assume something like this happens, I actually have the feeling that Black might be ahead at this point.
Wow.
I sort of like this. Just playing thickly there, this reduces the effect of the move White just played, this move. So this move is, as far as territory is concerned, this move is pretty useless now. Black has a very thick shape in the upper right, and I think that looks good for Black. Like this is just, it's a huge move in territory, and it's very easy to judge the value of this move because it's getting rid of an area that would be White's territory if White played first. Whereas the game move, which is also a very good-looking move, it's a huge move also, but it's much more difficult to attach a number value to that move because I just don't know how big it is. I don't know how much territory in the center is going to be.
Yeah.
So it's just hard to judge.
But just on that, I mean, I think we talked about this last year. Master seems to have a better feel for that kind of stuff than we do. Is that not right?
Maybe.
Or maybe
this is
just more comfortable with it?
I sort of have the feeling, I sort of like this move. I have the feeling that an AI also would like this move better, just because it simplifies the game and the value of this move is more easier to calculate.
Sure.
In this move, you just don't know how much of the center is going to be Black's territory. But I'm not saying this is a bad move. Actually, it looks like it's a huge move in that it expands Black's center and also reduces White territory in the left area.
Sure.
White jumps once, and now White peeps. Now this is where the game starts to go bad for Black. I thought of this move, and I thought of this move.
Right.
And I'm going to say that Black should have played here. So we'll start with this move. When Black plays here, this is going to be, White's going to cover here. And when Black curls around on the top, this becomes the vital point. And already Black has really bad shape. This is in the SGF file. This is where I ended the variation, sort of. Like if Black continues, why don't we add some moves to that? If Black continues like this, we can see that it's a very bad shape for Black to be connecting to the corner here. Black has an eyeless shape. Yeah. And so that's the weakness of connecting here. It gives Black bad shape after White plays here and continues with the Hane here. It sort of messes up Black's shape. So this is probably not very good. This is the move that I think Black should have played. White will probably extend here and push through here, but Black can wedge. And now we have to decide whether White's going to cover on the cut on the top or below. So let's say one of these two. Cutting below, White would like to push through here, but this is bad for White. When Black pushes through here, we can see White's shape is messed up. And White's going to lose the 3 stones in the center too. So this is no good. Did you follow that, Chris?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to read the whole thing out, and it's very complicated.
Okay, let's just, I'll go back up a bit and we can go through it again. White extends and pushes through here. Now, if we have white cutting underneath, white would like to push through, but this is bad because obviously if white plays here, this is going to be bad.
Right.
If white plays here, and black can always capture these stones with this move anyway. It's a kind of a net.
Right.
And white's shape on the right side is just pretty lousy. There's still going to be trouble for white later on.
Okay.
So this is no good. White probably has to cut above. So black connects, white extends. The next black move could be here. Well, locally, this is kind of a nice move. It's probably playing too many stones locally, though. So I'd say black plays here. Black hasn't really been pushed around that much. Like white managed to make some thickness there, but that thickness is not so important in the overall position.
So this is okay for black in this sequence.
This is okay for black, and I think it's actually pretty pointless for white to be going through with that. So white might actually be not playing this move, but switching to the center at this point. So white hasn't really, in this case, I don't think white has made any significant gain. Black has protected the lower side territory, and if it's sort of pointless for white to be pushing through here, then what did white get? If white's not going to do it, then white hasn't really gained that much in this exchange. So this is how I think black should have played. When white peeped here, what black did was black played here. Black's readying for a fight. Now I want to compare it to this move, in which case white can cover here and then play the hane here. In this case, white covered anyway. But now the hane is not going to work because black can get these forcing moves. And now black has great shape. It's a very efficient shape. In fact,
that's great.
Black can cover on the top now. So that's why I'm going to say that this move is probably better than this move, as far as shape is concerned. It has these two forcing moves here that black can use to fix his shape. So it's probably better than connecting like this. So in that point, I agree with Park that when he plays here. But the problem is that when white plays here, now the left side is in trouble. And we can see black's territory on the left side is sort of in danger of disappearing. Like black cuts here. And at this point, the Tetsuji is to play here. And we can expect this kind of thing to happen. White gets the whole lower side. And now you see, when this happens, I'm going to mark two white stones that are sort of dominating the board. These two white stones here are coming into play here, because white's going to get into the center from the right side or the left side.
Yeah.
So white's going to be coming in from one of these two directions. And when white does that, we're going to see that this lower side black group is not alive yet. And so actually this lower side group of blacks is potentially a liability, while white is getting something like 10 points where we thought black had some territory. So the difference in territory here is something close to 20 points.
Yeah. Black has really just gotten into a bit of a poor situation.
Yeah, when black is on the top like this, black wants to connect this black wall to the moyo to make a territory.
Right.
But these two marked white stones are in the way of that. And so that's why I think this is where black messed up, and black had to play the other variation, not this one, this one.
Right.
Not that one either.
Yeah, they went underneath. Yeah.
Black had to play underneath and just take the territory, and fighting on the outside or playing strongly on the outside. In this case, it was it had a bad effect on black's moyo in the center, whereas just taking the territory underneath would simplify the fighting on the lower side, in that black is just alive and black doesn't have to worry about it now. Whatever happens, black can just leave the lower side pretty soon. And so black doesn't have to deal with the lower side, but can continue to surround the center maybe. Makes it much easier for black to surround the center. So, sort of interesting that playing submissively here actually gives black more potential in the center.
Well, that was going to be my question. I mean, I'm assuming that black plays this way because black does not want to play submissively, just instinctively. He wants to play
that
more,
was probably
more
the
actively.
idea. Black wanted to be more active in the fact that black is sort of trying to surround the center. Quite often, playing aggressively overall on the board is quite often a good idea. But in this case, it just backfired. And it was a case where black had to just take the territory and sort of make this lower side fight end locally without having to worry about the rest of the board.
That's not what happened, is it?
Well, black managed to do that. As I was saying, this is the Tesuji, but that ends up with a black wall that is not really working. So what black did was he pushed through here, and he did manage to locally end the fight. But there was a big cost here, because black is Gote. We can see that now it looks like white has more territory than black.
Oh dear.
So there was a huge loss there. And because white has this, I'll mark it up again, because white has this extra stone here, there's virtually no effect on the white side territory. White side group is strong enough.
How many moves was that sequence?
Oh, it was about 10 moves.
10 moves.
Like it started with this. This was 76.
That peep is amazing, isn't it? Is that, I mean, it's...
Well, it's a troublesome move, but if black had answered here, it wouldn't really have much effect. I think at this point...
You're assuming master would play away, right?
Master might extend once and then play away or something like that. I don't think white can find any effective move at this point locally. So yeah, might just play once here and play away. Probably play something towards the center, but and just because the center is so hard to calculate, it's so hard to say how much territory black's going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know who's ahead, but I don't think it's bad for black. I think it's still playable at least, or maybe I would be choosing black rather than white in this position.
Right.
Whereas black ends up trying to sort of simplify it by playing this way, but compared to the variation that I was suggesting, the price is much bigger. And now white, with this move, I'm sort of thinking that master is already thinking is ahead, because this is a very conservative move. White could have gone in deeper, but the fact that white didn't go very deeply into the moyo means that master is happy at this point with just surrounding and allowing to surround. So this is kind of a sign. This would usually be a sign for any strong player saying that white thinks he's got a lead now.
Right.
And black cuts. Again, master backs down. This is a very cautious move. Actually, white could play the fighting variation too.
Yeah.
In this fight, the marked stone there is going to work for white, and the fight here it looks like it's advantageous for white. So there's no real reason, like black would probably continue. Let's see, let's try to do something for black. Black would probably continue something like this, and it would develop into a fight. But I don't really see white losing this fight. Like white should have an advantage in this fight. But it would be a lot more complication in the game. So again, we see that master is just simplifying the game by playing here. And even after taking this local loss, we can see that it took black 2 moves to get back the territory that was a black territory anyway. Like the lower side started out being a black territory. And so blacks had to add 1 more stone there to get the same territory. And we can see that white has some stones facing the center. These white stones here, these 3 stones.
Right.
Just because there's this cut underneath in the second line, it means that white's pretty well connected to the left side here. So white has some influence pointing towards the center. So although black had to use two moves to surround the lower side that was black's territory to start with, white has gotten an extra stone in the center now. This is really big, getting these 2 moves in a row in the center. Black plays here. Black is reducing white's territory. White moves into the center. Now we're exactly at move 100. And at this point, I'm saying that white is, it's probably pretty close on the board now. That's my feeling. And it's not only my feeling. I did go into the end game a little bit, tried to work out some end games. It's really difficult to get a correct variation at this point. We're only 100 moves into the game. But since all of the stones are alive, I would call this an end game already. So like there's going to be 150 moves of end game moves left. But white's it's pretty close on the board. If you look at the game record, you will find that white won by 1.5 points.
No kidding.
But that was just a case of master giving about 4 points back in the last, well, at least 3 points back in the last final 50 moves.
Wow.
And I'm not really sure about what I just looked at the final 50 moves, in which white was giving 2 or 3 points at least back. And before that, I think white might have been giving a bit to black also, although it's harder to say.
Wow. So white, I mean, in a close game like this, where it's not like the other games, and you know, it's there's still game, but it's the same thing where master just, you know, it's got enough, and it's like, okay, I'll just play it a safe way.
Well, yeah, I saw that happening already. Well, we've seen white's getting some territory in the center, but that sort of happened pretty naturally as black reduced the right side. Just going back to this point, where white's backing off from the fight here,
Right.
And then just playing the extra move in the center. White's already trying to simplify the game, and this is very typical of master when it knows that it's going to win. It simplifies the position, taking a slight loss locally. And so I think if I had played, if I was white, I would probably extend here.
Well, and that's not unique to master. I mean, you would do. I mean, any pro would do that as well, right? I mean,
right,
you got it. I mean, that's standard.
And provided I don't mess up on the fight here, I would probably win by a larger margin than master did.
Right.
But the fact that master knows that it can win by playing this way, this is something that would be much more difficult for a human to judge, just because there's so much open space left to play. It's much more harder to grasp how much territory each player has, just because the upper side is not decided really.
But it's also that you've got 150 moves of endgame to play, and that's we've talked about that before. I mean, that's actually that's difficult because
there's a lot of room for mistakes. Yes,
and it's a very narrow margin, right? I mean, you're talking a few points.
Well, I think that white's about 5.5 points ahead now. It's supposed to be a big margin, but in a game like this, you can lose it pretty easily.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much open space, a lot of open spaces that are close to no man's land. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of room for fighting left. We don't really know what's going to happen. It takes several more moves. Like black is trying to punish white's upper right corner group, but actually gets punished in the center here a little bit. And so as the territories, as the shape of the territories become more clear at this point, now it's I've added about 30 moves to the game here. At this point, it starts to become more apparent that white's ahead, and so it becomes more obvious, you might say. Mm-hmm. But still, there's a lot of area in the center of the board that is not decided, and that's sort of where master eventually backed off a little bit. We see black is gaining some points by pushing white around on the right side of the board, but it's just not enough. So yeah, the end game, in the large end game, I think both players are playing fairly well. And then, of course, in the final points of the end game, master backs off a few points, loses a few points. But that's okay because it's a winning variation anyway.
Right.
So yeah. So I guess that's okay for master.
Well, and again, it's something. Well, no, you wouldn't back off on points, right? I mean, you would.
Well, at least not exactly in the same way. I would. It makes sense in a way to avoid complications, but the way master does it is sometimes hard to explain that way.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Because I mean, on the one hand, as a human, it seems like the instinct is you want to have as much margin as possible, just because we like to have a big margin, because we're not necessarily confident of our count, because we're not necessarily something could happen. Maybe you get tired, and I think it seems to me that this is one of the places where masters, being an AI that can just really. A lot of those are just not factors. It doesn't matter how long it takes. It's not going to get tired.
And I think it's positional judgment. It's positional judgment.
It's really strong. Yeah. Wow. Cool. So this is actually a good game for folks who want to. I mean, you haven't done commentary on it, but it's people who want to look at endgame. It's probably a good game for them to look at, right?
Probably a bit too difficult. When there's so much in the center, usually end games with a lot of side moves on the side of the board, they're challenging enough, I think. And when you have end game moves in the center of the board, it's really hard to judge the size of the move.
Right.
So like it would be interesting end game studies maybe for your professional level American players, but for most players, I think you would want to have something that's slightly less difficult.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, once again, these have been really fun, and I know the folks have been really enjoying them. Lots of good comments, and we're very pleased. Thank you for taking the time. This has been a bit of a marathon.
It was my pleasure. I had a lot of fun doing it.
Good, good. I can tell that. So, well, and it gets us in pretty good shape to go to China and see some live masters. So we'll hopefully. I know that the players have been preparing special strategies, and as we talked about a while back, the AlphaGo team has not been resting on their laurels either. They have some new things as well. So it should be really interesting.
Yes. New things that we don't know about, so it's going to be exciting. And yeah, Katja is getting advice from all sorts of professional players about how to deal with Master. And I think really just looking at these 60 games that we've been going through, even though the time controls were so short in these games, and that's one excuse for the human players maybe, it still looks like it's going to be very difficult for the human to win any game. So like I think people will be talking about the percentage, the chances that Katja has to win one of the 3 games or stuff like that. So it's going to be a very tough fight for him.
Do you have
it'll be interesting? Yeah.
Do you think he's got any chance? I mean, not to put you on the spot, but I mean, it just seems, especially after going 60-0, it seems difficult, right?
Yeah. Well, the biggest unknown is how the time difference will make the extra time could make a difference, and it would be advantageous for the human because I think part of the trouble the humans were having was because of the short time limits. Sure. But it's been a few months again, and a few months is a long time for Master, for AlphaGo. So I'm expecting to see a completely different and new Master again, even after these games that were played over New Year's. They've had 2 or 3 months. Oh, sorry, it's more than that.
More than that.
4 or 5 months. So that's the amount of time that they had between Fang Hui's games and Lee Sedol's games. And so that was a big jump in itself. And so I'm expecting it's going to be very, very difficult. Like I'd maybe give Katja a 10-20% chance to win 1 game.
Wow.
But I am sort of interested to see what happens when if he tries to play Manigo, Mirror Go. But it would be not so interesting to comment on, though. Yeah.
Well, all of these questions and more will be answered very, very soon. So stay tuned. Thank you so much, Michael. It's been fun. Appreciate the time and the energy. And thank you all for watching, for all your comments. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Yes.